Hey everyone, welcome back to the Steamboat Institute's Facebook Live. I'm Ericka Andersen with the Steamboat Institute, and today I'm so excited to be talking with Morgan Zegers. She's the founder of Young Americans Against Socialism. So thank you, Morgan, for taking time to talk with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on, and I really love the Steamboat Institute, so I'm excited.
Oh, thank you. And for those that are watching, we think we might have a slight delay in the audio. So just if that's happening, just keep that in mind, and we're just going to power through. So let's talk about you and your organization. This sort of came across my radar a few months ago. And I think I may have seen you in an interview with the Daily Signal, which I used to work for the Daily Signal. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, whatever they're doing, I'm always paying attention. And I was like, this is really interesting. And it seems like something that's really necessary right now, especially in 2020, as we're hearing all of this talk. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
It's the crew up there is being a little loud.
Oh, you're okay. Actually, I'm not really hearing it. So I think it's probably not coming through as much as you think it is. Okay, but anyway, so what you're doing so important right now because of the conversation going on in politics and culture. So give us a little background on you, sort of where did you come from and how did you get this organization started?
So I'm from upstate New York. I'm 23 years old, and I'm actually home for the week. I'm not traveling. Usually I'm always on the road, so I'm home with my family. That's why there's dogs in the background and there's all these moving parts behind me. But I started Young Americans Against Socialism. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to not causing any partisan divide, not having any blame sent to the people in my generation who think they want socialism. Instead, we think that the people, the 70% of young Americans who claim they would vote for a socialist, just don't know what socialism is. They don't actually want to seize the means of production and have nationalized industries. Instead, we think that the few radicals in this country, Bernie Sanders, AOC, the Democratic Socialists in America, we think they are the true radicals who want actual socialism. They want to seize the means of production, and they are lying to my generation by saying, if we scrap capitalism, you'll end up like Nordic Europe. And so we're trying to dispel that lie, and what we're trying to do, and what we're using, the tactics, we're using emotion by interviewing people who have lived through socialism to kind of give a firsthand example and to what it's actually like to live in socialism. And then we're also providing realistic solutions to the top problems of our day that the left is using to convince our generation that we need to have socialism to solve these problems like climate change, the student loan crisis, and affordable health care.
So it's sort of a big deal to found an organization and get it off the ground, not to mention video work is like, that's a skill that you need to have. So what sort of, I guess, gave you the ambition or the ability to start something like this? And now months into its being around, like you already have thousands and thousands of followers and you're getting a lot of media attention. So talk to me about how that sort of all bubbled up for you.
Yeah, well, I was really happily surprised. You know, it was a good surprise to get so many followers from the beginning and so many small dollar donors. It really showed me that this is a movement of average Americans who are just putting their foot down and saying, this is ridiculous. We've had enough of this. I don't know why socialism is even in the conversation. And that's how it really started for me about not last year now, but in like November 2018, AOC and the squad was elected. I saw a poll from Gallup right after that election that said it's official, a majority of young Americans would choose socialism for the future of the country. And, you know, I wasn't really big on the topic in general. Like, I did study economics in college, but I just saw that statistic and I was like, socialism? What? How is that even part of the conversation? And so I was like, we just need the basic facts, the history, the truth. And to me, it's embarrassing that my generation supports this idea. And if we just equip them with the facts that they deserve, then they would be able to stand up to the people who are lying to them, and they would be able to make decisions for their own. But right now, they're not dealing with the facts, and they really deserve the truth on this. It's embarrassing.
Now, do you have any kind of personal connection to the issue? Because I know that you're talking with people that are from socialist countries, so you're getting those stories. Anything in your background that, you know, specifically connects you to this issue, or is it just something that you have just felt passionate about as a person who cares about our country?
Well, I'm in the conservative movement in a way. I've always been involved in conservative politics, but what really made me want to get involved with the aspect of socialism, I had a communist roommate in college, and I tell this in my speeches all the time. Basically, I moved into a house off campus with some girls. I didn't know some of them, and so I went around and introduced myself, and one of the girls had a poster of Mao Zedong, Lenin, Stalin, Karl Marx, and Fidel Castro on her wall. And the two lessons I learned from her after she told me, "Oh, I'm a communist," was, first of all, she was one of the nicest people I've ever met. And she had a poster of mass murderers and dictators on her wall. And she really, truly, deep down in her heart, believed that communism would be the best way to help the poor and working class and create a more moral, fair, and equal society. And so I was just seeing this amazing, well-rounded, well-educated young American in a good place in life, in an amazing country with all this opportunity available to her, want socialism and have a poster of mass murderers and dictators on her wall was just so eye-opening, because I've never seen those men outside of a history textbook, in a black and white picture, or in a black and white documentary. And then the second lesson that I learned from her, she said that Republicans and conservatives were mean. That was her word, mean, because we don't put taxpayer dollars and government action or force behind what we say we care about. So do we really care about it? And that just really struck me. And so I all of these things, I don't have a family member who lived in a socialist country. I don't have any personal aspects or anything like that. But it was just an accumulation of just being an average American, experiencing my communist roommate, and then seeing all the polls and knowing that I wanted to help out in some way. I figured providing the truth and providing realistic stories of what it's like to live in socialism would be the best way to move forward on this, because we don't want to alienate the young people who are leaning towards socialism or leaning left. We want to bring them in. And I think we can best do that if we talk to them in a peer-to-peer way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's good to remember that people that are leaning that direction or believe those things, like it's from a good place, like they're only wanting the best, but there's a lot of misconceptions. I'm sure you're talking to a lot of those young people now. Outside of what your roommate said, is there anything else that you're hearing like more commonly that is a misconception that people just don't really understand when they say they support it?
Well, it's pretty much the same conversation with anybody who at least is an apologist for the socialist movement in this country. They usually say something like, "Oh, well, I'm a democratic socialist," or "It's democratic socialism, it's different." And then so you say, okay, what about the most resource-rich democracy in South America, in the continent, that democratically elected a socialist candidate for president after that candidate for president promised a more free, fair, and moral society based in socialism? And then once he was democratically elected, he implemented socialist economic policies. He seized the means of production, like Bernie Sanders has repeatedly said he would do. And then the economy collapsed, the government turned into a dictatorial government, the people start starving, and if you speak out about the atrocities you're experiencing, then you're run over with tanks, as we saw on video. And so once you kind of bring up Venezuela, my communist roommate, actually, I asked her about it one time, and she said, "You guys love to bring that up." And it's like, yes, we do love to bring up Venezuela, because it's a perfect example of a democracy that is resource rich and overall just wealthy, adopting socialist policies. So once you talk about Venezuela, then they go, "Oh, no, we're going to be like Nordic Europe. We're going to be like Nordic Europe, guys." So then you can talk about, okay, Sweden, Denmark, they rely on capitalism. They have big government programs and high taxes, but they rely on the wealth created from capitalism. And so all I'm trying to do, this is not a Republican or Democratic organization, and I tell this to Democrats all the time, be a Democrat, I don't care, but understand that we need capitalism and the wealth created from capitalism to pay for any program that you want to see established in the United States. If you're a Democrat and want social programs, they will not survive under a socialist economy. And so just creating that appreciation for capitalism, for the wealth created under capitalism, and really just a gratefulness for what we have in this country is my long-term goal. And I know it's very high level, and obviously we have shorter term goals, but in general, I just want my generation to understand we have a great opportunity. Everybody can live their own American dream. The American dream's not dead. And hopefully we can see the bigger picture and become more appreciative of what we have here.
Yeah, and we have to realize, like, I think it was just today that Bernie Sanders, you may have seen this tweet that he put out with this long list of countries that were supposedly socialist countries, but then very quickly a lot of people on Twitter were like, yeah, he's leaving out the fact that there's capitalism in these economies too. And so, it's like, yeah, people look to Bernie Sanders, they think, sure, of course he's putting out accurate information, but like read between the lines, do your own research, and like what you guys are doing, getting it out there, making sure people do know what's available and what's true. I think that's awesome. Now, and going back to the videos that you guys are sharing with people that are from socialist countries or have escaped communist countries, those stories are really the most powerful things that you can bring to people, and personal stories really make all the difference. So how are you finding the people to share stories? I'm just curious about that. And then secondly, what are some of the most powerful things you're hearing from those people?
I would say it's pretty much the power of social media that's brought us to all of these great stories. A lot of people DM us. We obviously get some fake stories, which can be pretty funny, but most people DM us and they say, I escaped from this socialist country. I would love to tell my story and make sure that people your age have a better understanding of what it's like to actually live through it. And then, of course, we reach out to other organizations who maybe have those connections. Victims of Communism has been really helpful. But some of the most powerful stories, we had one, when we first launched this, it was crazy. We got 1 million views in 24 hours. We had over 45 million impressions in 1 week, or in 1 month. The numbers were just kind of crazy and we weren't expecting it. And it's because these stories are so powerful and so emotional. But we had a story of a Cuban who escaped Cuba by windsurfing across the ocean from Cuba to the Florida Keys. Took him 90 miles. It took him 10 hours. He got to the shore right off of the Florida Keys, and he was picked up by the Coast Guard. He was brought back to Cuba. He spent 3 years being abused by the Cuban Castro police. He was harassed. He was beaten. And then eventually, after 3 years, he became a political asylee in the United States. And now he serves in the United States military. He served in Afghanistan. And he is even worried that his children are going to grow up experiencing such wealth and opportunity that they're not going to be grateful for what they have here in America. Even he's worried about that. So it really just brings it all together. And then my other favorite story is Gabby Franco. She's a Venezuelan Olympic shooter. She came to the United States probably, I think, within the last decade or two. And she talks about how when she was in Venezuela and Chavez was just coming to power, her Olympic shooting coach, who had escaped Cuba under Castro, started to warn her and her team, you know, this guy sounds a lot like Castro. This guy's making the same promises as Fidel Castro. I'm a little worried. Chavez sounds like Castro. And everybody was like, oh, dude, like, come on. You know, we're not an island like Cuba. We're resource rich. We've got a lot of money here. It could never happen. We're a democracy. It could never happen here. And so now Gabby Franco does a video with us saying, I cannot believe that I'm in the same position my coach was in 2 decades ago, warning the youth of America that this could happen here, as they tell me it could never happen. It's like just watching these interviews and interviewing the person when I'm there, it's mind blowing. And it really is. It's hard to not get worried and to not get scared, but I do feel optimistic because I know deep down our generation, I think we're incredibly capitalist. I think we're incredibly creative and entrepreneurial. And we just need to reconnect with those values and understand that those are capitalist values and American values. And I feel really good about the future.
That's awesome. And I mean, it sounds like, you know, we can tell from your social media presence and all the views on the videos that you guys are really making an impact. Are you are you happy with the results, and what are sort of some of your goals for the next, I guess, year? I get, you know, you're so new that it's hard to probably think past the next year, but maybe the next year and then beyond that, what are you thinking?
Well, so for 2020, we're very focused on kind of dispelling the lies of the left that we're a 501c3, so we're not political, but Medicare for all, climate change, the Green New Deal, those are all really strong talking points of the left right now. And so we're trying to dispel those. I talk a lot in speeches on college campuses and at conservative events about the 3 tactics that socialist leaders throughout history have used and how they are mimicked by the leftist leaders in our country. First of all, they control the narrative and the language. Second, they create a desire for wealth redistribution. And third, they create a sense of fear and urgency. And I think first of all, they do the first. Bernie Sanders all the time. He'll even post videos where he says, what is freedom? Are you free if you have student loan debt? Are you free if you have high healthcare costs? Are you free if you only work your dead-end job for health insurance? And the video says, no, you're not free. freedom comes with economic freedom, and economic freedom comes from the Green New Deal and Medicare for all and student loan cancellation, XYZ social policy. It's crazy. So boom, controlling the narrative. It's straight out of The Road to Serfdom by Hayek. The second is creating the desire for wealth redistribution. I think they're doing that with the student loan crisis. They're saying those evil rich people over there with all that money that you don't have, those millionaires and billionaires and the Wall Street bankers and businesses and the CEOs, all that money that they have, they don't deserve that. They didn't earn that. They took it. It's immoral that they have that much money. Give me power, and I will use my government power to take what they have and give it to you, to cancel your student loans, your medical debt, to give you free XYZ. The third is creating fear and urgency. They do it with climate change. They say the world's going to end in 12 years unless you support the Green New Deal. The only problem is AOC's chief of staff admitted the Green New Deal started as an economic transformation from capitalism to socialism in the United States. And then later on, they slapped a sticker on it that said climate change. So I don't really see any genuine concern for the climate. I think this is just them creating that sense of fear and urgency to pass their socialist agenda. And that's what we'll be focusing on. So we're kind of going through the history of socialism. We're making educational videos for the first few months of the year about Karl Marx, Marxism, Leninism, socialism versus communism, history, historic movements of socialism throughout our world. And then, of course, we'll move into themes by month for environmental policy, health policy, education policy, and beyond. So that's kind of our 2020 goal, and it's definitely going to keep us busy for the next year.
Yeah, how many people are on your team? Because you can't be doing this all by yourself.
No, well, it's been hard because we started out with consultants and per hire or for hire videographers and editors, and it was just such a scramble getting everything filmed. So right now we're trying to fundraise for an in-house studio where we can just create more day-to-day and weekly educational content. But we just hired an amazing new editor, and those first few videos that we're making with her are going to come out in the next couple of weeks. So we're kind of taking a little hiatus. But it's about four or five of official consultants or staffers that work on this consistently. And then if we need somebody else, we'll hire. But we're a small team. We're all young and we're hungry, and we're working really hard on this.
Well, I think regardless of what happens in the election this year, we're going to need what you guys are doing because there's going to be continual push for this stuff. So Morgan, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to chat with us today. The Steamboat Institute is really all about producing young conservative leaders and really uplifting you guys and everything that you're doing. So you're right in line with some of the things that we champion. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you do. We really appreciate it.